France have joined talks in Moscow aimed at reducing tension between Russia and Ukraine. The group is aiming for a diplomatic settlement after Russia massed over 100,000 troops on Ukraine's border. This comes ahead of talks between the United States and Russia in Geneva next week, with NATO and Russia also due to meet on the 12th of January. Meanwhile, the UK has become the latest Western power to warn Moscow of sanctions if its campaign on the Ukrainian border continues. The British Foreign Secretary says measures targeting the Russian financial sector are being considered. So what could President Putin's next step be? Let's talk to Andrey Kortunov, the Director General at the Russian International Affairs Council. Andrey Kortunov, welcome. What is the significance of these talks in Moscow involving the EU's two biggest members?
I think the idea is that everybody would like to keep the Normandy format alive. And it is increasingly difficult to keep it alive because it seems that the Minsk agreements can hardly be implemented, at least in full. And there is a clear resentment in Kyiv. They don't like the agreements. They believe that these agreements were imposed on them. I think this is one of the problems, and this is something that Putin would like to discuss with his Western counterparts.
And for those of us who are not familiar with the Normandy format, just explain what that means.
Well, the Normandy format is a group of four countries engaged in attempts to resolve the crisis around Ukraine. It is Russia, Ukraine itself, France and Germany. And of course, France and Germany are supposed to be honest brokers or mediators between Kyiv and Moscow. And there are complaints from Kyiv and from Moscow that allegedly these players are not honest brokers, that they take sides, and that's why we cannot really move ahead. But it's the only format we have. There is nothing else that would allow us at least to approach the Ukraine problem. So it is indispensable in certain ways.
The United Kingdom government says it'll target Russia's financial sector, quite possibly assets held by Russian nationals in the City of London. Will that be a deterrent? Will that work?
Well, that really depends on whether it is just the United Kingdom or it is the West at large. Of course, Russia is interested, or let me put it in this way, Russian oligarchs are interested in keeping their money in London and to do initial public offerings at the London Stock Exchange. However, I think that for the Russian population at large, it doesn't matter that much because they don't have the financial resources in London. The question is, under what circumstances London can go for such actions against Russia? Because right now what Russia is doing, it has some military operations on its territory without crossing the Ukrainian border. So the question is whether London is ready to take a preventive measure against Moscow, or it will be waiting till this hypothetical scenario of Russia invading Ukraine directly.
I want to ask you about Kazakhstan. How far could Russia go in supporting President Tokayev?
Well, I think that Russia can go quite far, not only Russia, but also a group of Central Asian states and other allies of the Russian Federation, including Belarus and Armenia. I think that they're committing to supporting the legitimate government of Kazakhstan against insurgents. But practically, it's not a military operation, of course. It's rather a police operation. They might provide for security of particular governmental buildings, but I don't see a larger function for them in Kazakhstan, at least now.
Andrey Kortunov, Director General at the Russian International Affairs Council in Moscow. Thank you very much for talking to us.